Salut, bienvenue à ton tuto de grammaire. Et là, aujourd'hui, on est dans le livre de grammaire euh, progressif et nous sommes sur la page 34 du livre. Et là, on parle de quand est-ce qu'on utilise c'est, il est et pourquoi on n'a pas d'article quand on parle de notre profession. So, welcome to your grammar tutor. We're on page 34, did I say? Yes, of the grammar book. And we're looking at when do we use il est, when do we use c'est, and why is it that we don't have an article, so we don't have an un or une when we're describing what we do. So let's have a look at those bits. So first sentence at the top is always like an introduction to what is going to be covered on the page. And it shows you some examples, and then the rest of the page is dedicated to explaining what those examples are about, why they're like that. So, Paul est médecin. So, Paul is a doctor. So, we'd say a doctor, but in French, there's no article, there's no un or une. So, je suis professeur. I'm not je suis une professeur, je suis professeur. Il est pédiatre, he's a pediatrician. So, again, no un or une. C'est un pédiatre renommé. So he's a renowned pediatrician. Now we have an un. Okay, so let's work out why we have it sometimes and not others. It's not actually complicated, this one. You'll be pleased to hear. Okay, so if you think about when you're describing what you do as a job, then you're describing, aren't you? So pretty much then that becomes an adjective. And I think that's the best way to think about it, as being an adjective. So, je suis secrétaire. No une in there. I'm a secretary. Tu es ingénieur, pardon. You are an engineer. No article in there. Vous êtes professeur. You're a teacher. No article in there. And as it says here, l'absence d'article concerne la nationalité. So I could say je suis anglaise, for example, for nationalité. Or je suis britannique. La religion, so your religion, your profession. So things that describe things about you. And they're treated as adjectives. So Paul est professeur, il est anglais, il est protestant, il est marié. So he's a teacher, he's English, he's Protestant, and he's married. And none of those have an un, because they're all describing him. But if we want to do some add some qualifiers to it, some more precision to it, then we reintroduce it, because we're sort of like saying he's one of many now. We're not talking about Paul being a professeur, we're saying he's one of many. So Paul est un professeur exceptionnel, or he's being compared to other professeurs. So Paul est un professeur exceptionnel. So he's an exceptional teacher. So if we want to say Paul est professeur with no article, but the minute we want to qualify it and we say something that compares him with others, then we would reintroduce the article. So Paul est professeur est un professeur exceptionnel. Paul est un bon professeur. There we go. On ne met pas d'article quand la précision indique une catégorie professionnelle. But if you're talking about being more precise about a professional category, then we're really going back to describing again. So we don't need the un or une. So Paul est médecin généraliste. So he's a GP. Paul est un bon médecin. He's a good doctor. Okay, because so there you can see the difference between the two. And it says médecin généraliste est une catégorie professionnelle. So that's a professional category. But bon médecin, you're describing him in a little bit more detail and comparing him to others in that. On utilise c'est au lieu de il est devant un nom déterminé. So once something's specific, a specific noun. So let's have a look at some examples to see what that means. So c'est mon voisin. That's pretty specific. Okay, so it's my neighbor. But then we're sort of like making it il est adjective. Il est sympathique. So then we're going to an adjective. Il est sympathique. I'll tell you what, actually, when you're looking at this, it's really useful, isn't it, to know your parts of speech, I'd say. So here we just want to remind you, this is an article. This is a noun, a nom. And that's an adjective or profession. So, c'est mon voisin. It's my neighbor. So, c'est mon voisin. Il est sympathique. Is he nice? You wouldn't say c'est sympathique. You say il est sympathique. C'est un professeur. So we're not talking about Paul exactly. So we can say, c'est un professeur, he's a teacher. Il est professeur de quoi? But then we've dropped it. So he's a teacher of what? C'est un jeune professeur d'anglais. So it's a young teacher of English. Ah, il est prof d'anglais. Ah, he's a teacher. Professeur, by the way, you can shorten to prof. So this is the way you say it. C'est un bon professeur. You can't say il est un. And c'est mon voisin. You wouldn't say il est mon voisin. You say c'est mon voisin. Let's just introduce another little point here at the end here. So certain names of professions didn't used to have a feminine form, but now they have two forms. And here's some examples. In fact, this is so obviously in the English language, we've gone down the neutral avenue, haven't we? Of police officer, for example, actor, those. So we've got neutral names for professions. But it's a little bit difficult when you've got a language which has got masculine and feminine in it. So previously, there were names like professeur was always un professeur, regardless of whether it was me doing it or a man doing it. But now, you have un professeur et une professeure. Or professeur, sorry. So, Paul est professeur, Marie est professeur ou professeur. I didn't know there was that new version there. So if you were saying that Paul is a good teacher, how would you say that? So Paul est un bon professeur, because once we're qualifying it, yeah, we can say un bon. We say that Marie is a good teacher. Marie est une bonne professeure. Yes. So you can now say masculine or feminine. Écrivain, écrivaine. Auteur, writer, auteur. It's quite tricky actually because it's not always obvious what the masculine and feminine are. Infirmier, infirmière would be another one, for example. So if you get a question like this, quelle est votre profession? You'd answer je suis, and then you say directly what it is that you do. So we've got professeur again there, and comptable, which is an accountant. Qu'est-ce que vous faites? What do you do? And the question normally gets extended to qu'est-ce que vous faites comme travail? So what do you do as a job? Or qu'est-ce que vous faites dans la vie? What do you do in life? Which I prefer that one actually, because then that opens it up to maybe you don't work, and then that's everybody, isn't it? So what do you do? Is qu'est-ce que vous faites dans la vie? Je travaille dans une école, une banque. Ma profession est comptable. No, you wouldn't say it that way around. So je travaille. So instead of saying ma profession est comptable, how would you say I'm an accountant? Just simply je suis comptable. Je suis comptable. So key things to remember when you're talking about yourself, you're describing yourself. So here we've got your profession, your nationality, religion, if you're married or not, those sorts of things describe you. Treat them as adjectives, and there's no un or une involved. But if you wanted to pick somebody out or pick somebody out and talk about what their profession is, which is comparing with others, kind of giving it some precision, then you can put the un or une back in, as long as you've got some adjective there to describe it. And we're using c'est mon voisin. C'est mon voisin. You wouldn't say il est mon voisin. C'est mon voisin. But you would say il est sympathique. Voilà, très bien. And then we've got, see, masculine and feminine, well, not obviously, but because of the masculine and feminine nature of the French language, we've got masculine and feminine for each profession as well. Bon, bah, merci beaucoup d'être là. Merci d'être venu. Et puis, bah, à la prochaine alors. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir. Au revoir.